Let me ask you one last question before we sort of move on to, time after performing. Because you had mentioned, you obviously have been talking a lot about um, not being, totally happy with the way things were. Do you have a sense of what you wanted in terms of like sort of like your ideal um, version of your experience and what was going on there, or do you feel like this was just you growing up, and it was going to be like that um, regardless?
Can you rephrase the question?
Well, I mean, what I'm asking about is maybe like what were you looking for out of that experience that you weren't getting in the times that you were dissatisfied with what was going on or unhappy in a general
Yeah.
sense.
Okay. Yeah. Well, as a teacher, I started by being a terrible teacher for some of those same reasons. I wasn't grown up yet. My first year teaching the A Corps was 94. And coincidentally, that was with Lee. And he wanted the line to play matched. So he wanted me to teach because he figured I get two sections taught for the price of one tech, because it was going to be the same technique, right? It was just all match grip. And so, um, but I was not, I very much still needed guidance and didn't really have it, or enough of it, I should say. And it ended up just being really, really bad. Just I was a bad teacher, I think, and I think I was, back then I was self-medicating with a lot of pot and some drinking and things like that. It just wasn't taking good care of myself. Was just was in no position to give somebody else a good experience. So I really regret that. But I think, and I got let go at the end of that year, which was really the best thing for me. And then that kind of, so the Corps had some rough times, right? In those Len Kruzecki years. And then JW Kester came on in 96, and it felt like a breath of fresh air. And so then Jim got the caption head gig and the writing gig, and he said, "Hey, come do this with me." And I was like, "Yep, let's make it right now." So we kind of came in with that fresher energy, and we're like, "No, we're gonna make this, really, we're gonna have some control. We're gonna be able to make this the way we think it ought to be, and try to give these members an experience as close to what you know we, to what we can, the best experience that we can give them." That said, I still had a lot to learn in those late 90s years. And I ended up, I did 96 through 99. And then I quit and went down to LA with a band that I was in, whereupon arriving in LA, the first thing we did was disband. So it was kind of this
Of course.
failed experiment, So I lived in LA for a while and, worked temp jobs and saw the the drabber side of life. And eventually I moved back to the Bay Area, and I had a couple of years away from the activity, and it turned out that was really what I needed the most. I had grown up enough and had enough, trials and tribulations by that point, that I felt like when I came back after that break, I was teaching, and I had come into my own, and I had my own things to say. I wasn't just rehashing what other people said, trying to get the same response. I really searched for a lot of different ways to try to make an impression. And just, it took me a lot of years to figure out that, you need to get up on your own stuff. Like it's gotta be from the heart, because you can't bullshit, especially in this activity. You just can't do it. People are going to see right through that. You can't try to be somebody else. You're not Ralph, you're not Glenn, you're not Scott, you're not Kevin or Lee or any of the other instructors. Rob Shavera was a big influence on me. And so I think that's when I feel like, it took me like 10 years, essentially, like from 92 to 02, to figure out how to be be more of an empowering force. And it's like, okay, these guys, the reason we're not executing is not because these guys are jerks. It's just not, that's an old trope that I was just recycling from, that had been beat into me in a lot of ways. When, through some really great, sessions that Myron Rosander would hold when he'd be, giving the corps a little what for in his just amazingly innovative and original fashion. I thought I would do that, but it's just like it always fell flat. So by the time I figured out, what, get out of their way, here, have some cool stuff for them to play, be able to help them get better. But, these people that are here, they've paid all this money, they've sacrificed all this time. They know what they want. They want to get in here and kick ass the way they saw people before them do that. So just give them some tools and get the hell out of the way. And I feel like I did more of that after, all that time. And then I think we started, those were some good years in those early 2000s.
Absolutely.
So you say after you aged out, you didn't do anything in 93?
In 93, I taught the Cadet Corps.
The Cadet Corps?
Yeah, actually, yeah, right. Of course. Jim, he was writing, that was his first bigger corps writing gig, and he was writing the whole book. And, we had a bunch of bros who were teaching, and we actually had a really fun time. But it was, at a lower level as far as expectation and stuff. So it was easier to have a good time because you weren't doing a big old tour and all the pressures that go along with that. But yeah, that was the first year that I taught, I guess, but it was for the Cadet Corps.
And then you came back in 94, and then you didn't teach in 95, but then you got reunited back with Jim in 96, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
I did 96 through 99 before I took the break and went to LA.
Did a lot of the Cadet Corps members that you had taught in 93, did they move up in 96?
Yeah, I think a fair number of them. I mean, this is where it's like my memory is just so bad. I put people in the wrong years all the time in my memory. So I don't exactly remember who, went from 93 to 94 line, or maybe all the way to 96 line. But there were probably at least a few, if not more than a few.
Yeah, speaking of 96, another person I reached out to was Zach Morton. I guess he'd marched Vanguard during the years you were there as an instructor. And he wanted me to ask you, I don't know, maybe if you remember this, he's in 1996, and I'm not going to mention any names, but we'll just say an anonymous member of the tenor line gave you a present. I don't know if you remember that at all.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And we don't need to use names, but yeah, if you want to tell that story.
Yeah. Well, this person was a, shall we say, a creative individual. And in 90, I guess that was 96. If you'd asked me about it, I might have said it was more like 97, but I'll take Zach's word for it. He's probably got a better memory. So this person comes up to me and in the creepiest but young kid voice possible says, "I have a present for you. Can I give it to you after rehearsal?" And I'm like, "Oh God. Okay." And so after rehearsal, he hands me this little sorry looking box with a little sorry looking ribbon around it that he probably found in a trash can, because he probably just assembled it an hour before he said something. And I looked at the box, and knowing this person, I said, "If that's a dead bird, I'm going to kill you." And I was right on the money. It was a dead bird in a box, like the way a cat would bring you a dead bird that it found as a,
wow.
I guess I had to tell myself, this is his way of saying he loves you.
Yeah, that's when Zach kind of told me the story, he was laughing the whole time, but and I don't know, it's just creative, but like you say, creative but different.
Yeah, well, this person, yeah, he was a unique. He stands all by himself in the pantheon of all the marching members of Vanguard as like nobody else, I think, even came close to him personality wise. Very, very creative guy. sometimes he struggled with the playing a little bit, especially in the earlier years. And, he struggled sometimes with some maturity things. Like I remember one time I had to put him in timeout, like literally. I think probably because I couldn't think of anything else to do. And I just needed him to not be in front of me. Mm-hmm. But he's also one of the people that I know got more from his total experience at the Vanguard than probably I did. And it's people. Well, the other thing, actually, I should preface this story by saying that if you ask, somebody like Ralph or Glenn about me in the early years, they will tell you some of the same things. Like I was sort of a twisted little kid.
Sure.
And, I just think it was a part of, me as a young male person whose moral compass is just sort of spinning around, trying to find a true north. So I was odd. I didn't give anybody a dead bird that I remember, but there was plenty of like off-putting things about, my dwelling, the posters that were on the walls and, some of the accoutrements and so forth. So yeah, I think
we can edit that out.
Yeah. I think this person probably just, kind of knew that about me as well and thought that I would think it was cool when in reality I was like, no, that's pretty much awful.
But a prologue to this story is this person is like an amazing human being and is doing great stuff now,
For sure. Yeah.
And like you said, the artistic creativeness in him is just probably works on a different level.
Yeah. And, it's funny. We were talking about Lee earlier and I was saying how, I didn't see eye to eye with Lee in a lot of ways. And we had our differences way back then. In fact, at one point when chat forums were kind of a fresher thing on the scene, like I got into a really big blowout with Lee through a chat forum before I realized that I don't like doing those kinds of things. But it's, it just took me a long time to see the reality that like Lee is he's an extremely talented guy. What he's talented at, I don't know if I could articulate for you, but he's really talented at it. And, his brain works differently, and so he's done some really great things, just, from sheer dint of will of just, having an idea and just being super driven to execute that idea. And he was always like that. So I got to give him lots of props for that. And I think, the dead bird person was, not to be confused with the Rick and Morty character, was, maybe like that a little bit too.
So, you mentioned coming back to Vanguard in '96 with Jim. Where were you at with your writing at that point? Because I remember I had aged out in '95, so I had, was gone back to being a spectator for, many of those years after. I remember Vanguard playing Cheesy Poofs back then, I think. And, yeah. But as far as like, writing exercises and getting that kind of workout, where were you at as far as, putting out that stuff? Because obviously a lot of that stuff has lasted the test of time.
Yeah. Another case of like, I don't remember when I came up with these various things, but it was just it was a way of trying to question, like, why are we using this exercise and why are we doing it this way? And also just kind of it's a new era for Vanguard. We want to have just things fresh, right? So there were a lot of exercises invented for that year that didn't stick around necessarily for whatever reason, but Cheesy Poofs and Flammus were the two that people still play. And yeah, it's cool. I mean, I think in some ways, like those are more popular, and more widespread than some of the etudes. It's like one of the repertoire for people. And that's really cool. It's great. It was never designed to be that way, but the fact that it is, it's cool.
Yeah. Like Flammus, I was kind of shocked a couple of years ago. My daughter started performing in drumline, so I got to go to shows and watch stuff. At one of the fall events, one of the local high schools, the Sunny Hills High School, I'm sitting there and they start playing flamus like everything, and we're talking a high school line of like 6 snares, 3 quads, 5 basses, and I was kind of blown away. The talent level now of the high schools performing like a Vanguard exercise from back in the day. Do you ever trip out like on the talent level now of the performers, like at the early ages that they're doing this stuff now?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't get to a lot of performances and stuff, and not necessarily because I don't like it. I get in my, I just still kind of get in my bubble and stuff. And I'm just not, since I'm not teaching anymore, I just feel kind of removed. But every time I see something, it's remarkable how good people are and at younger and younger ages. And it has to be in part because of the internet, but I think it's also in part just because there's just a lot better teachers out there. And because the activity has gotten, I think, more inclusive, I think that's had something to do with it. There's, if you're including more, more girls and more people from different backgrounds, racial, whatever, like different, well, hopefully there's still a wide variety of economic backgrounds present, even though things are so expensive. But, it just seems like there's just more of a mixture to play with to find the talent that you want to get for your program. And yeah, I'm especially like floored by the classically trained percussionists that are up in the front. I mean, what, like, it's insane what these players are doing with the formality technique and just the sound quality they're getting out of the instruments. I mean, everything is just such a high level, the way that they're amplifying the stuff and no longer having to play with the huge core mallets and playing with nice touch, and just the way things are amplified well most of the time by the the really strong groups that have it figured out. I mean, it's just on a level that I can't even relate to. Like, I just don't know what I would do if I were teaching anymore. Like, I feel like I'm so out of my league when I watch the groups today and all the stuff that they have to do, the physical demands and all of the movement that's now, part and parcel of everything. And it's for sure. Every time I see it, my jaw drops on the ground. It's like, wow.
I'm sure you would figure it out pretty quick if you had to jump in the saddle.
I just feel like I would want to spend too much time, playing to 53 beats a minute and trying to learn how to, keep really good quarter notes at that tempo or something like that. There's like, they got movement in like 7 minutes, so keep going.
So let me ask you about something, because obviously here in Southern California, pulse percussion is a really big influence. And they play a lot of your stuff, and they have over the years. And obviously Glenn has worked with them a lot. Was there a point where you were aware that there was this group that was, going to basically adopt a lot of your body of work as sort of like the basis for what they do? And the reason why I asked that is because, Robert talked about high school lines playing your stuff. Well, all of these kids go through those programs and they all end up teaching the high schools, and they end up teaching the same method and approach and exercises. So this is what I was referring to at the beginning of today, where I was saying, when you walk through the lot, we hear your influence very directly and very identifiably. Was there a point that you became aware of that? Were you ever involved at all in any of that? What is that like? Because, and I'm sorry, this is really long, but what I will say is, I was at a wedding that John Mapes was at, and I talked to him a little bit. And one of the things I mentioned to him was that what they teach felt very scalable as far as being able to work at the high school level and being able to teach kids from scratch. And when you see their kids go to schools, you see this immediate result of an uptick in terms of quality. That is all an extension of you, in a sense. And so my question is how aware are you of that, and what does it feel like to know you have that impact, but at the same time you're a little bit removed from it because you're actually, you're obviously not directly teaching that stuff.
Yeah, it feels weird, but I mean, certainly in a good way. I mean, that is a very, I'm very honored to hear that. And I have been aware of what John's doing down there and that group for a while. I mean, it took me a while to come to the terms with the fact that I couldn't have, like, I think the first time I spoke to John, we were probably fighting over weekends for members. And fighting is obviously just emailing back and forth, trying to work it out, right? But I remember him in one of the emails saying, we're he was lobbying to have some of the kids in the late aughts for a camp or whatever, and he's saying we're teaching your technique, and or something to that effect. And I was surprised by that, and one of the reasons I was surprised is because, like, what's my technique? Like, I don't know what my technique is. I know what I don't like, and I know, like, I like to hear good music, and like I like to be able to listen back to something and go, that feels pretty good, like it has a good feeling quality to it. Like it's everybody's standing 2 feet on the earth, and it's like it has a groove, or it has something to connect with. But I don't know what the style, like I don't know how I would bottle that up. So to hear that, I was like, well, what does that mean? Like, what's my style? I hope it's not like this, or like tilting the snares or something. It's like those are, like half the time, some of that stuff that we were doing was just purely experimental. Like the tilt, that was just an experiment that was almost arbitrary at the time. Just say, let's try that, having no idea that it would become this thing for people. So it's, yeah, I mean, but what am I trying to say here? It's an honor to hear that. That there are people, and I think there's some of the students at Marching Vanguard that had kind of had it in both sides. They were doing Pulse and they were doing Vanguard as well. Just getting steeped into that. I think they have bottled it or created more of a system for it than I think I ever had, if that makes any sense. Like I felt as a teacher, like half the time I did not know what I was doing, as far as cleaning, as far as, the science around making parts work ensemble-y. Like I think I had decent ensemble ears, but there's, there's no way I could make drumline sound as good as like Paul Rennick, right? Like, I mean, just, he's got something going on that I don't think I'll ever comprehend. Like what I do, I felt like at the time it was just a way of what those drum lines were, was just my sort of musical preferences. Good timing, good feel, smooth, not hurting. I kind of got into Moeller technique at one point, and actually like the basic strokes stuff that some people are still doing, where you come down with the accent and you float the taps afterward. That was pre Moeller for me. That wasn't I had really not investigated Moeller at all. That just was me. I was always like trying to figure out what makes it work for me, like what feels good, because that's the only thing that I'm going to teach. Like I'm not going to try to teach anything that I wouldn't do as a player. So I'm going to, like doing those kind of motions made my hands feel good. And so my thought was, okay, this is what I'm going to teach. We're going to do an exercise where you just do that. And then we'll flip it and we'll do the opposite because, and this is something that I think I did not do well. Because on drum corps, you have to have good squeeze grip technique chops. You have to be able to articulate and do the quick upstrokes and all of that. I wasn't as good at that. I think we spent more effort on smoothness and flow than we did on just getting the fulcrum chops going and being able to, do the fast flam stuff. So in hindsight, I wish we'd have done a little bit more of that as in addition to this, so you get the complete package. But
it's kind of crazy. You talk about technique, and then you go back and look at the era when we all marched, and you watch the videos, and it's like little arm movement. It's all real rigid arm, all wrist movement, and then now it's like more relaxed, and it looks more fun to play now as compared to then. And I think you helped with that transition into smoothness and a relaxed feel.
Yeah, well, thank you. If I did that, I think that's great. Because I used to pride myself on our players not getting wrist injuries, not getting repetitive stress injuries in the elbow and stuff. I mean, I'm sure that it wasn't 100% success there, but I really that was a big deal to me. It's like, you guys are flying around the field as much as you are. It doesn't make sense to add more to it by being tighter than we need to be to play this or this. However, to play this, you got to squeeze on the stick and you got to go to guns, I think is the way we used to put it. But yeah, I totally know what you mean. I look back, and when I look back at when I marched and some of the lines back in our day, like at least a lot of the Vanguard lines that I was in, I more or less just see a bunch of people trying to just play on their own. Like, I don't remember spending a lot of time really detailing all the heights. Maybe we did, but the way I remember is just, here's the time, just play clean.
Well, you know what's interesting is maybe that's why your stuff works so well in terms of teaching kids, because you can go into it with sort of an intellectual idea of here's how it should be played, but the notes have a way that they want you to move in terms of executing them, and some of that can just be inherent in the beats themselves. So it's almost like the beats show you the way, and then you can sort of reverse engineer an intellectual explanation for that. And maybe that's a little bit of what John, was referring to as far as, if they're going to make this part of their curriculum, they're going to, see what does this exercise want from me? And I like that, and it feels good. And maybe you didn't even know you were putting that in the exercise when you wrote it, but you were, as far as the rhythm of the movements themselves and the sort of the combinations and different transitions in terms of what was needed when. But that's become, and even more so, I think one of the other things that's really effective, other than the fact that your stuff grooves so much, and that sort of adds to it, but it provides a really strong reference for kids. So any of these, when a group like Pulse adopts this stuff, they can look to Vanguard playing it, and they can say, if there's any questions about how it should be played, they can look at that. And then the kid, the generations past that can always look back. So it's almost like you hand out the exercise and kids are like, they already have a general sense of, I know what this should sound like. I sort of visually know what it should look like. And then when they start playing it, it just makes sense, out of the box.
Yeah, I think that's true. I do. I have a penchant, I think, for just trying to be creative and going back to, first principles essentially, and just going, what are we trying to do with this? Okay, we're playing 8 on a hand. What are we trying to do with 8 on a hand? Is it doing anything for us? Is it, yeah, I guess it is, but is it doing exactly what we need it to? Maybe not. So let's come up with some stuff. So back in the 90s, tempo control and, finding a groove and being able to hold a tempo, I do remember being quite adamant about those kinds of things. And a lot of those exercises came from, let's play some flam drags, but let's not play it in a triplet grid. Let's play it in the 16th note grid where the stakes for tempo control go up. And let's do some patties, and let's change up the syncopation. Let's make a little thing out of it. And so it has a little melody, if you want to call it that. And, you have to kind of lean into it especially if there's a click going on, or, something that where it's like, no, it's, if you can provide a vehicle that kind of, add water makes its own sauce, like the exercise itself kind of leads the way to the development that you're looking for, kind of like, basic strokes where it's like, flow. Okay, well, here's the exercise, 1 accent and 8 taps or whatever it is, just getting used to doing that. And so
it's funny when you bring up the names of exercises, it's like I'm reminded, oh yeah, this group plays that exercise, like Boston,
right.
Playing your exercises, or locally Bakersfield College and Golden Empire using basic strokes. Are you familiar with Arcadia High School from down here?
Well, yes, peripherally. But,
so last season for indoor season, I went out and videoed them in the lot at one of the early shows before we got shut down, and they started playing, and everybody was like, "Is that Flash Gordon Henderson?" And
yeah.
and it was amazing. I mean, it's a shame that you probably didn't get to see them live, because it wasn't just that they were playing the exercise, but it was how they were playing the exercise. I mean, and they
I
have
would love to see that. Yeah,
they have a lot of really good instructors. I'll send you a link to the video I made of them playing it. But Nick RC teaches there, and Kyle Harry teaches there, and I want to say James Catherall. I'm not sure of that, but they are not just playing the music. There is something about the approach that they're applying to it that just makes it sing. It just really captures something special.
That's great. Yeah, it was. I mean, I'm not sure if we ever got it to that stage in the years that we did it. I mean, it was pretty hard, but again, it's like, what? Let's do some independence. We first call it Franken eights, because it was kind of supposed to be take the place of the 8 on a hand, just legato strokes, but obviously with these weird rhythms. And you can just be your own metronome, right? Or you could be your own, you just keep the click with your right hand, and, always wanted to do it at like grace note height, just felt, not heard. So I would love to see that, because.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I actually made a meme about a week or so ago of, it's like the guy that plays Superman, what's that guy's name? Henry Cavill.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and Jason Momoa sneaking up behind him, and it's like me playing in 4/4 confidently, and then Murray Gusseck sneaking up behind you.
Yeah.
You got to see somebody send you that one.
Yeah, I got it about 5 times shortly after that was posted. It was just, it was really funny, really creative.
Okay, well, I'm glad you enjoyed that one. Yeah, I kind of chuckled when I made that.
Robert is the king of memes. He loves his memes.
I like memes, and I like making your videos or making your exercises into music videos.
You're very talented at it. So please keep going wherever you want to.
But yeah, like George is talking about, he talked Arcadia High School. There's a famous video of Chino Hills High School playing one of your double beat exercises from a couple years ago.
I think I did see that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, I always wonder when you see other groups, like the high school groups or even the world groups play your stuff, do you ever just realize that, hey, that's my work and it's still out there alive out in the wild?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's always a compliment. It's always absolutely humbling to see it, and especially because by rights, I don't really, I'm an old guy at this point. I've been out of it, not just age-wise, but I've just been out of it for a long time. And so it's surprising in a wonderful way that people still find value in that stuff. And I think even though I'm out of the activity, I still keep I want to keep a small foot in the door, even if it's just to share technique ideas and stuff. And so, I think I have some more to say. I don't know if I'll ever be able to say it with an ensemble, because I don't know that anyone would want to necessarily give me their ensemble, because I'm not going to care about much other than like good tempo control and,
Sure.
making grooves and stuff. But if there's anybody out there that just wants to make grooves and, wants to do that well, hit me up. But yeah, it's always humbling, and and it's surprising at the same time. So I feel lucky. And it was, I feel, again, it all goes back to those early days where I, just a young kid, went up to Ralph and went, "Hey, Ralph, check out this thing." And,
Yeah.
he goes, "Sing it. All right, you go teach it." And, but then, after he saw that it was actually a cool thing that everybody was into, it was, he was like, this is cool. And he made a point. He never took credit for it. I mean, he would point me out, and we'd be playing, or like, remember one time, like we were probably at Allentown or somewhere, and he had seen Tom Hannum came over for the first, they were seeing each other for the first time in a while. And, he's like, "Tom, check this out." And, we played the thing.
How must that feel? Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know who Tom Hannum was. That's where I was, I maybe I'd heard the name, but I couldn't, it was too my own little thing. But, Ralph was like, I think Tom said, "Ralph, that's really cool." And Ralph's like, no, he did it. And and he did that at like clinics and stuff. And yeah, I can't describe that feeling very well with words, just how honored I was, and just how happy that made me. And so, a lot of that, just all the other writing, like I said, it's all kind of just notes back to Ralph's, like, "Hey man, thinking about you with this.
Yeah, I was going to say, you talk about keeping your foot in the door. Before the pandemic, and I don't know if I could speak for George, but one of the things I was excited for was I had read that you were coming back as a clinician or a consultant with the Mandarins, and then I saw a video of them playing Flamis. Was that?
Yeah, we were set to do some stuff, but then then pandemic, and then everything kind of ground to a halt. But yeah, and there's some talks about some level of involvement. I don't know what that'll be at this point, whether it'll be 100% virtual or what. I mean, everybody's just kind of, I think, waiting to see what happens with vaccinations and stuff. But yeah, I've got some former students teaching there, and I stay in contact with some of those guys, and for some of the same reasons you were just talking about. It's really cool to see people who buy into whatever approach, however they interpret what the approach was, and they've added, like Pulse, they've systematized aspects of that and put their own, awesome mark on it. And like a lot of those members go out and do the same thing with high schools. And so they've probably found ways to articulate bits of it that I never would have come across. So if anything, I would just kind of love to be a fly on a wall, and just kind of listen to how that stuff's being taught and being like, "Oh, I wish I'd have thought of that."